Hi, everyone. It's Sam Eckman here from Gold Derby with two of the men behind the sound design of Deadpool and Wolverine, Craig Hennigan and Ryan Cole. Uh, I was going through some old credits before we talked today, and I realized, Craig, you worked on the first Deadpool film. You also worked on Logan, and this film begins with this, Deadpool and Wolverine. We have this almost gloriously blasphemous desecration of Logan's final resting place. What
Right.
was your reaction when you were suddenly tasked to return there with some absurdist humor in this film?
Yeah, I ended up I had that scene quite early on. The guys sent me an assembly of that, and I was like, oh, this is how they're gonna open the movie. Interesting. Okay. And then you sort of get into it, and part of it is you think of like how many people have to sign off on these kind of ideas, like from a sort of creative standpoint and a you know respect standpoint, right? Like respecting Logan and respecting the heritage and all that kind of stuff. And thankfully, Sean and Ryan, they do due diligence and all that kind of stuff. They make sure everybody's sort of up to snuff with what they're up to. But what a way to kick off a film, and what a way to sort of get the story going and understanding kind of right away that it's Deadpool and Wolverine, and you're in for a treat, and Marvel fans are in for a treat. Yeah.
Yeah. And it
Well,
is
and it's
a
such a
kind
love
of,
letter to
oh,
it
sorry.
as well, right? Oh, sorry. I was going to
Yeah.
say it's such a love letter to Logan, like that Wolverine dying is what breaks the universe, right? So it's like, and there's only one person that can do that is Deadpool, right? That and still keep it okay and not sacrilegious, I guess.
Right, right.
And I think it's a kind of brilliant love letter and showcase of your work in the sound department because you have this adamantium skeleton, which is used for some pretty gnarly moves in this fight scene. And Deadpool is delivering all of these quips. He's constantly talking to the camera in his signature style. So break down that scene for me. How do you go about finding like adamantium sound effects for
So
all
you're
of his
talking about like
moves?
the title sequence, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Talking about, yeah. I mean, the adamantium was one that was sort of exciting to us because it was like it's a kind of the first time, right? You got, especially later on in the Void fight, for instance, where you have an adamantium sword, Deadpool's new sword, and then you have the adamantium claws, obviously, of Wolverine. The fun thing in the title sequence was not to play the full reveal of like all the adamantium sounds that we're going to get. Obviously, we're dealing with a huge title sequence with big music, so you started kind of picking your moments and couple the moments that are subtle but are when he's digging, and then that last sort of like ringing sound that he hits, like what Deadpool hits with the shovel, is obviously he's hit Logan, right? The skeleton of Logan. And so there's a little hint of the adamantium sort of ring right there. And then it's used a couple times during the title sequence, which you don't really catch because of the music and the sort of like size of everything else that's going on. But you know, the challenge is sort of like, because Deadpool is talking all the time, and sort of you need to hear all these jokes, you need to hear every single line of dialogue, every single word of dialogue. It was a challenge for Ryan and I to sort of make sure that sound effects got out of the way, that dialogue was super clear, that music got out of the way in spots, and it just took a lot of time to sort of refine and make it rhythmical, lyrical, and all those sort of things, right, Ryan? It was sort of that sort of challenge.
Yeah, and it was for me, it was a lot of keeping it really tight and really clean so that the space where we needed to get the line in, we could get the space in the line in, and then Craig could keep powering with the effects because you don't want to have that dip in a big action sequence or the opening, which is almost like, there's a lot of music. You don't want to feel the dip in energy so that you hear a quip, right? You want to hear the quip with the energy building the entire time. So
Yeah.
even just moving like a line, a frame might give Craig that extra ring out or hit, or even just, or for the beat of the song, like, just to emphasize that. There's a couple places where the efforts are played pretty minimally except for like the kind of the guy that gets stabbed in the crotch, but there was one that we added when the three fingers hit each guy, and it's because we were missing a beat in the song. um And because there was nothing necessarily happening on screen, we added an extra effort to kind of like bump, 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 like that sort of thing to keep the rhythm going, and whatnot. But it was, for me, it was just keeping it tight so that we could get the lines in and out, have them play loud so that Craig's effects could still go hard.
The interesting thing about all of that that Ryan sort of touched on is, if you listened to that sequence without the music in and watched it, you'd be like, well, all these sound effects are out of sync. They're not like in sync with the picture, is what I mean. So what we're doing is actually follow the song, right? So like what this little section Ryan sort of explained, that stuff is not in perfect sync with visual, but it's in sync with the music, and that's kind of what makes it sort of like just be rhythmical and lyrical, and actually everything starts to gel. And it's a very common thing that us sound designers do once all the pieces are put together, right? When you know that that's going to be the song, you know that this is going to be the cut of the title sequence, and this is how it's going to look visually, then you start looking for like, oh, if you put it in sync with the picture, it doesn't quite jive. But then if you move it a few frames left or right to sort of land on the beat, then all of a sudden things sort of slide into place and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. I think, something you kind of both touched on is a sense of rhythm, which there is a whole distinct rhythm to this whole film, which is really responsible for a lot of the comedy. And I'm kind of wondering, because you talked about the music, the dialogue is nonstop for them. Usually they're not just delivering a one-liner and moving on to fighting. What is your process of finding that rhythm for comedy and sound design?
Oh God. I mean, honestly, kudos to obviously Sean and Ryan and our editors, our picture editors, Dean Zimmerman and Shane Reed. I think the four of them, that's sort of the brain trust in post-production. And a lot of the ideas come from how they've cut something together, and they're very, very sensitive to a couple frames here, an extra frame there.
Yep.
And they're very, very into like playing the movie for people that aren't deep in the film in terms of like working on it. So like what would be called friends and family screenings, right? And then we did do a few previews of the film as well, like internal previews and stuff, right? So everything was very, protected security wise, but we could still get an idea of how an audience was going to react because, your point of like they're talking nonstop and there might be three jokes in a row. Now, if the audience starts to laugh at the first joke, then they're certainly not going to get the second or maybe the third joke. So then, you start thinking about like, oh, they need to open up. Maybe they're going to add another 4, 5, 6 frames here to sort of allow the audience laughter to sort of dissipate and then hit with the next joke. We as sound designers and editors, we obviously have to follow that roadmap. That's usually, with these guys, it's very, very well thought out. And then we sort of just look at it like, okay, well, this is working over here, but if we move things even a little bit more to the left or right, it's actually going to give more space. You always got to think about the audience watching it for the first time. Like, you know what I mean? So they're in a theater, they got their popcorn and they got their drinks and they're sort of engaging and all this stuff. And if you have too many things coming at a person, it just sort of like numbs you. So it was really, really important to put the brakes on sound, to put the brakes on the music, to sort of get out of the way, not lose the energy, not lose the size. It was really, it's this constant dance, like not even scene by scene. I'm talking like almost shot by shot in certain scenes,
Yep.
right? Ryan?
Oh, definitely. Just the whole action comedy thing is really, like you're saying, just the pace and energy of it all. You don't want to dip because as soon as you do, you can fall into a hole. So, we're full steam ahead the entire time. And yeah, those jokes are timed so perfectly in some of these instances that, yeah, when we get it on a big stage and we're with us, we can maybe nudge things little bits, but it's the timing that they created in the picture cut and with the shoot and all that was our roadmap to it all.
Mm.
I think the rhythm's in the script as well. It goes right back to like how,
Exactly.
some of this stuff Ryan Reynolds has been thinking about for years. There's stuff that's in Deadpool and Wolverine that I know he thought about in the second Deadpool or even in the first Deadpool and stuff. So um, when you got a guy who's got ideas and percolating ideas like that, and he's clearly, a comedian that is dependent on rhythm and uh, it can't help but sort of like start getting into all the different facets of filmmaking.
Yeah. I've heard Ryan Reynolds is a bit of a sound nerd himself. Is there what was it like working with him in the booth?
Fantastic. I mean, Ryan Cole and Ryan Reynolds have like, they're best buddies for sure.
So
Ryan, I'll let you, Ryan, you should take this one because you definitely, you guys were definitely at a next level.
yeah, I mean, so like, we had the whole movie. We sat and we did 3 full days of ADR with him, right? And he's wanting to plus every joke or change it, see if maybe one joke works better, just because he wants to make every single thing better if we can, which we loved because we're all in it for it, and I think everything he was doing was working towards that. So we'd on the final, we'd sit there and he'd see, okay, I think I want to redo this one. And he and I would run back to my edit room, and we had a microphone there. It was all acoustically treated in my room. And he would riff off, 10 versions of the joke he wanted to replace. And then we'd cut it really quick, ship it to Laura, and she'd mix it in really quick. And we'd be like, yeah, that's better for that first half, but let's keep the second half of the old joke because I think we've been watching it for 6 months, so maybe we're not, maybe tired isn't the right word, but maybe we're just like, oh, new joke's gonna be funnier. But is it better? Is it funnier because it's new to us, or is it better than the old one? So we always had to be consciously doing that. And Sean and Ryan were pretty good about that, right? Which is why we'd put the joke in, watch it a couple times, and then come back and be like, no, actually, let's go back to the old one. But it was always like, as Craig has said, short yard game, just trying to plus every single little thing. Like, can we add a little ew gross when he's stabbing the guy? Like, okay, that's a great little thing. We don't need another one after that because that's too much. But it was because he's wearing a mask for most of the movie, you can say whatever you want. Which became challenging, but challenging in a really fun way. I don't think I've ever worked harder or faster cutting in all that ADR that we had to for this movie.
Fantastic.
And Ryan's so musical with his ears, and he has the movie done. And I've said this before, but it's a lot easier to make a bad recording of a good read sound great than it is to make a great recording of a bad read work. And we never get a bad read from him, and he'd have the movie memorized. Like we did 40 cues of ADR in 30 minutes, and he didn't even stop because he'd look at the line. He's like, I know where this one is, and he'd be matching it in, perfectly into that line without any sort of reference. So made my job a lot easier, and it probably made Laura's job a lot easier. So we're just worried about matching the quality of it and the rhythm from one into the next. But it's not. But he's just so great at performing it all that it made our lives really easy.
Yeah,
That's great.
And then from sound effects, he is a sound, not only with the dialogue and the jokes and the writing and the rhythm of that, he is a sound effects guy as well. He loves sound design, he loves sound for films, and quite often during our editorial process, my FaceTime would pop up and it'd be Sean and Ryan, and Sean would be like, okay, here's Ryan, and then Ryan would explain, like, he would talk in sound effects, he would talk in sort of like, oh, I want to try to do this with Gambit and yada yada, kind of stuff. And so that, again, when you have a guy like that, sort of like almost road mapping some of these little sequences out with just vocal sound effects, it's kind of cool that you can kind of start carving out different ideas that is literally right from Deadpool himself. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. One of the unique things about this movie too is that you kind of inherit a few spaces. Like, a lot of it takes place in the Void or the TVA, which were established in the Loki series, which has its own sonic identity, separate from this film. So how do you relate your own work to that when you kind of inherit a space like that?
Yeah, great. I mean, it's a great question because you want to honor Marvel, right? You want to honor a lot of these sounds, and early on we were, it's pretty obvious, and we were told, yeah, we need to find the sounds of Doctor Strange's special circle, and we needed to sort of find Loki and stuff, and thankfully, working with Skywalker and the guys that work on a lot of those Marvel movies, I was able to sort of get the real sounds. So the TVA has all the real sounds that would be in the show are in our film, and we augmented them a little bit here and there, but for the most part, that's all that stuff. Doctor Strange, same thing. You know, the Wolverine claws and some of the X-Men stuff, and Johnny Storm. You know, I've worked on the Fantastic Four stuff, and I've worked on some of the X-Men's and stuff. So I had a lot of that material, and we recorded fresh stuff for a lot of those little things as well. You know, Gambit, we didn't really have a full set of what Gambit would be from the other film. You know, I think he was only in one other film, and he wasn't in a ton. So that was a fun one to sort of figure out, you know, which different card tricks you can make to record that, you know, when he unfurls the cards or when he's throwing the cards and all that kind of stuff. So, but you definitely honor the Marvel stuff, and then you amp it up and you fit it into sort of the world that, you know, we are in, which is a realistic, it's hyper real, right? You know, it's not super space sci-fi. It's like making things fun and big and bold and in your face in the Marvel aspect of it. But definitely based in sort of a realistic nature in terms of recording of sounds.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I did want to ask, because you guys have this great, history of working together. You're Emmy winners together for Stranger Things, and you've worked with Sean Levy before, so it's kind of a nice little reunion of people. What is your favorite aspect of getting to jump on a project where you have that like long history with your collaborators?
Ryan?
I mean, Craig and I always like, we watch the movie and bounce each other's ideas off like right from the get go. And I think we usually have fairly similar ideas to things, which is why I think we work well together. And we're like, oh yeah, you do this, I'm going to grab on that, and we'll meet here, and um, we'll meet back to get this reel done. And obviously, working with Sean and Dean and then Shane on this one, like having that history is great. And we had we had Ryan with Free Guy and Adam Project. So it was really, really nice place for us to all come together. And it wasn't like, oh, who's this? Oh, we got to be nervous because this is going to, it's like, well, no, we're all in it. I can be straight about, I want this one to be like this. Oh yeah, you tell me to shut up. I want, like we're all family. We get texts at 3 a.m. from each other or Ryan in Budapest saying, hey, I want to add this sort of thing. And it's not like, it's never a nag or a bother. It's all part of the family, and it makes us really comfortable, which I wouldn't necessarily have maybe with other directors that I hadn't worked with as often, to be like, hey, can I present you this idea really quick, like since we're here, and if they don't like it, that's fine, but at least with these people I'm comfortable doing that sort of thing, which isn't always the case with a lot of directors and actors and whatnot.
Yeah, it's the safe, it's the safe space, right? That Sean, I think it's the safe space that has afforded us the relationship that we have with Sean and now Ryan and stuff is
Yeah.
the, the multiple films and multiple projects. God, I first worked with Sean and Dean Zimmerman way back in 2006. So, they've been, Ryan mentions family. It certainly is that, and all the good things that come with that, and all the sort of sometimes frustrating things that can kind of come with that. But Sean creates this amazing environment that you can try ideas and you can do things, and the way the workflow is set up and all those things, culminate in an amazing project like Deadpool and Wolverine, where you're on a final mix stage and you have Sean and you got Ryan Reynolds there. And I'm not talking just for a couple days for Ryan Reynolds. He came in like for 7 or 8, 9 days. He was there and living with us, living on the stage and seeing the process, and then seeing, oh, I can actually say this and get it, and then it can actually happen right now because the wonderful Ryan Cole can say, yeah, we can go record that right now and bring it in and stuff. So um I think that's what's the best thing about working with long-term sort of relationships, long-term directors and picture editors and stuff. Yeah, it's just that shorthand becomes such a valuable asset.
Well, it turned into some outstanding work on Deadpool and Wolverine. So, Craig, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're watching, stick with Gold Derby the rest of this season. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you guys.